So here's the thing. I'm stretching the truth just like a little bit. The title is correct, but it also might be true that this piece was started, just a little bit before the 3-year mark. However, given that it's technically been 3 years and 9 months since I've last, by the way, hello. I haven't posted in a while. You're probably wondering why I've been gone so long and where I've been. You probably have a lot of questions, and I'm prepared to answer absolutely none of those right now. But I will soon, specifically on Halloween. Ooh, spooky update. I will say though that despite my absence, I've missed you all very much, and I'm happy to be able to share at least some things over the next few months, at least. I felt it a little more appropriate to dive in with content I intended to be posting on here regularly in the first place, at least for this first video back. I can go back into talking about me and my situation at a later date, and it also gives me time to answer some questions. I don't know if one can build a successful YouTube channel based on update videos alone, but I do not intend to find out. So where was I? Lying. No. I was explaining that this piece, a redraw of the characters I came up with in my last video, took a little longer to complete than I thought. According to the original footage, I began this in June of 2021. What kept this from being completed is that I was hating how it was turning out. Rothna, the technomancy wizard, as you'll see in a bit, was giving me a bit of a struggle, towing the line between sketch and digitally painting, as well as the lining between capturing the energy of the original, but also including some of the shifts and changes of the character themselves as I've naturally developed them over time. I was definitely also going through a period where my eye for art had well advanced past my skill level in that point in time, and as a result, I set it aside for a while, a good long while, and I even left it incomplete on Patreon. And I only really had Theophania completed, and I don't even know if I would say completed, she was like half done. But now I finished it, I went back to it, and now it's done, and I can move on. I'm fairly pleased with how it turned out in the end, though. I think I've come to accept them as completely different entities, the original and the new one. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and now I can move on. I can dust my hands of it and move on, which brings me to the next few points. The differences then versus now. I'll get to the visuals in a sec, but I'd like to touch on their characters and the worlds they come from first. The original video was without commentary, and I left descriptions of the two in the description. The concept of the original universe and its characters was born through my fixation on creating these character mood boards to build OCs from scratch, basically. It was like throwing darts at a board of character aesthetics, tropes, and music lyrics in order to create a ghost of a character I then fill in with story and other details myself. Original character Mad Libs, if you will. The working title of this story idea was Thus Always to Tyrants, inspired by the song of the same name by the Oh Hellos. I touched very little upon it in the description of that video, but it's a mix of, I'd say, classic D&D-esque fantasy with modern themes. A group of 20-somethings from a small beachside town sort of phasing in and out of realms of the fantasy and the mundane to assist a runaway princess and a cyborg wizard, technomancy wizard, these two here. They group up to take down a tyrant queen of beasts and thwart her attempts at conquering both realms and stop her from kidnapping people from both realms. The idea in my mind is that they're slowly taking down bosses and henchmen in a monster of the week sort of scenario, is the best way I could describe it. Very clearly inspired by the boom and popularity of Dungeons & Dragons and my binge listening of tabletop gaming podcasts, as I still do. The main point of interest of this concept, like every world universe of mine, is the characters and their dynamics. Thus Always to Tyrants focuses heavily on the bonds of found family and dynamics between the 6 team members. The only other character in this lineup to actually really get some art is the team's knight and or, I guess, paladin-esque character, Harper Stone, because everyone loves a bimbo with a sword, including myself. However, someday I hope to get the visuals of the other 3. Eduardo Castell, a light sorcerer and the team's main healer, Imani Becker O'Brien, a divination witch with combat power similar to that of a cleric, and Angus Calhoun, the team's melee fighter with a barbarian class sort of edge. I've never actually played any sort of tabletop RPG, So the goal wasn't to especially create a well-balanced team based on any game type, but I enjoyed playing with elements of them as I saw fit. This story has taken a backseat to almost every original creation of mine over the past few years, almost. But however, I am still quite fond of the idea of it, despite being fairly simple and admittedly pretty run-of-the-mill plot-wise, honestly. Visually, Theophania and Rothnna have stayed mostly the same. A lot of design elements have been thought through a bit more in this version, namely Rothnna's robotic anatomy and some clarity into like the shapeless, massive black Theophania is actually wearing. If you're familiar with the last video, you may or may not remember her name was actually stated to be Brigitte, and Brigitte Jaeger is still a character in this universe, but somewhere along the line I swapped her name with that of another character, and I don't know if you guys mentally switch your characters' names around in your own head, but it's happened a little too often with this situation for me, so I ended up establishing it as true just to make it easier on myself. Cause why not? Who am I trying to impress? And also, Theophania is a fun name for her. I think it's pretty fitting. And it's nice to shorthand it to Theo. Sometimes I think it's kind of cute. So, story-wise, Theophania and Rothnna are linked by a similar goal in saving both realms from Theophania's monstrous queen mother, and to do it before Theophania's quote-unquote coronation, which is just another fancy way of referring to the transformation Theo goes through into turning into the same monster her mother is. It's with Rothnna's help that she managed to escape the first attempt of the passing of the crown and run away to the mundane world to find worthy candidates of the power to defeat her mother. Theo is the default protagonist of this story, as it technically revolves around her bloodline and her fears. In this, she's also kind of the default leader of her eventual team, but despite this, she's not so much as leading as she is walking ahead of the others, I'd say. And in the beginning, not a lot of confidence to be the champion of her own story. It's at this point where Rothnna is really the only person she can rely on and the only guiding figure in her life to help remind her to put one foot in front of the other and do the next right thing. There's a guilt that also is eating away at her from essentially tearing her new friends from their previous lives to fight for a cause that they're not directly involved in, which is highlighted further by that terror mounting inside of her, knowing that any day a switch could flip and she could quite literally become her mother and turn on those same people she's come to love and care very deeply for. Rothnna, the technomancy wizard, is essentially one of the story's most powerful characters, second to the villain, and he's the voice of reason, the most experienced ducking in and out of worlds and adapting to both. He's persuasive, clear-headed, and the voice of their cause, pretty much. He is the wise old man and at the beginning of the hero's journey, giving others the tools and the guidance they need to set the team up for success. And despite his sort of calculative, robotic nature, he's actually quite playful and has a good sense of humor. Being developed by a team of royal science wizards, that's what I wrote, royal scientist wizards, he was built to be the perfect reconnaissance agent and gatherer of information for enemy territories and areas to conquer, which soon led to developments of him being turned into a weapon. He's got some of that typical inner man versus machine conflict, as well as some identity issues extending to even his human side, as he himself was originally cloned from the son of the deceased founder of that wizard guild. So he's got stuff going on. Stuff you don't know about. Stuff I don't know about. And you might not know this about him either, but he likes cats, and his favorite flavor is grape. Very important and interesting character lore, as always found here on the Canary Witch YouTube channel. So that's them, our golden duo from this OC universe that has next to no development, not even a real title or names for most of its characters outside of the main 6. However, I think that they're still pretty decent, and they've been a good time to design for, and I think their relationships with some of the other characters are even better. I do so love strangers who couldn't be more indifferent to the idea of each other, quickly bonding and working together out of necessity, forced to rely on each other and eventually becoming each other's family. I think I also said I was going to touch on some of the worlds, but I realized looking at my notes here that I have next to nothing written down about them other than like their outline of the general characteristics. So no, yeah, the town of Oakmont is unfortunately just a beachside town. So on to the piece itself then. In most ways, this version I feel is better ultimately overall. However, there is an appeal of the original that I do think I prefer just slightly. And that's mostly because I was trying to capture a feel, I think, rather than create or draw two fully developed characters. And in that way, I think it's kind of nice. I like having the two separate entities, even though they're not really that different. It's kind of there to show what a bare bones concept could look like with some bacon in the oven for a little while, 3 years to be exact. And even though I haven't tended to them very much, I'm still pretty pleased with it, I think. And no matter which one is preferred, in the end, you still get two cakes. I really did enjoy playing around with like lighting and defining certain elements that I was either unsure of or things that I wasn't skilled enough to implement myself or didn't have the patience to. And I absolutely spent a lot more time on this piece comparatively. I mean, the year-long hiatus from it aside, it was nice to go in and define a little more characteristics and really just see the two of them on canvas again. This really is, like I said, this really isn't a universe I draw much of or give much attention to, but it was a breath of fresh air from some of the other things I've been doing. I'd like to thank everyone who is either a returning subscriber or completely new to the channel for watching. I hope to see you next week and for many other weeks into the future. In the meantime, if there's any questions you have for me, or if there's anything you want me to be sure to cover in my update video, leave a comment. If there's anything you want me to make in the future, any topics you'd like me to cover art-wise or creation-wise, things like a set schedule, drawing your OCs, and meet the OCs will be discussed in this next update video, so no worries there. But I've missed you all very much, and I hope you all are doing very well. It wasn't a completely easy decision to return to YouTube at this current time. It's honestly, I'll go into more depth later. It's actually a very inconvenient time for me to return to YouTube, but I don't know. I just felt like I had to come back, and I'm doing that now. So with a grateful heart, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much. Love you all. Bye-bye, starlings.